Many of them know Africa, but they know Africa only as a concept. They haven't really feel it, they haven't really sense it. They don't even know how to connect the dots in the African world.
When I left the continent, when I finally became black, I like to joke and say that I used to be Tawanda on Africa. Then when I left, it's like, oh, I guess I'm black now. But there's something I realized where being seen as a person was not something you can take for granted. We no longer live in the world of the stereotypes of Africa is just a poor place with no electricity, no education. No, just by listening to an African talk about themselves and their experience, you start to understand that they too are people. They have hopes, dreams, aspirations, etc., etc. What certain, cultural factors, historical factors dictated certain things. And we'll get into that later as well. And then from there, I went back to Zimbabwe again for a bit. Then I came back for my PhD at the Ohio State University. And I started off in a PhD in dance for about three and a half years there. And then I moved over to a PhD in African and African American studies. I shifted over there, partly because I felt my research was facilitated there, and partly because I was nudging out of the dance department at the time as well. But it turned out that what I needed was much more available in the Africana Studies department at that time. So that's how I ended up with the PhD in African and African American Studies, still focused on arts, culture, and politics, primarily dance. So that was my journey in the US. Oh, after that, I started teaching at University of California, Merced, in the Central Valley of California. And then I got the job at University of Texas, El Paso about 4 years ago. So that's how I ended up here. So quite a journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You see, it is lovely to do a story. It is lovely to listen to people tell their story, because now you have recounted an experience that lasts several years in just a few minutes. You have opened up a world for a lot of people. This is really powerful. This is what I think storytelling helps us to do, because many of those things that you made mention of, there are a lot of people that have never heard of that before. And I'm not joking. That is really the truth. They have never heard of such words before. So now you are telling story, you are helping them to connect. And for people of African descent in a particular sense, when we tell our story, we are sort of healing something inside of them. And this is what I mean. Many of them know Africa, but they know Africa only as a concept. They haven't really feel it. They haven't really sense it. They don't even know how to connect the dots in the African world. So when we talk now in Africa, you talk of Zimbabwe, you connect dot in Zimbabwe. Now, it makes more sense to them, because you are talking of Zimbabwe, the land of your birth, not as an abstract term like most people will have it understood. You are talking of it, the people, how you dress, going out, the enjoyment. You see, we are understanding Zimbabwe now through your eyes. This is purely different compared to maybe when an English is talking about Zimbabwe, who is going to be using words like they, like something far away from the person who is reporting it. But we are actually seeing it inside of you. It's a different thing altogether.
Very true. Very, very true. And it's important that you mentioned that idea of like dealing directly with that experience that I have as an African who lives there, who's from there, where that land and those histories and those people are very sacred to me. because there's something I learned, speaking of things I learned about how I was perceived when I left the continent. When I finally became Black, I like to joke and say that I used to be Tawanda on Africa. And when I left, it's like, oh, I guess I'm Black now. But there's something I realized where being seen as a person was not something you can take for granted. Being seen as a human being, you can be seen as a Black person, but that's not necessarily a person because of history. Blackness and things like that were things that were invented at a specific time in history to prevent people seeing us as people. So in fact, my research right now talks a lot about personhood, what it means to be a person. But I look at it from the African perspectives, because I also teach African philosophy, religion, and spirituality, and things of that sort. So I'm asking that simple question: what does it mean to be a person? And as you were talking, you mentioned something that I describe as understanding that the interiority, the interiorness, the things inside of a Black person. A Black person is usually seen just from the outside and what they can provide to the economy. Are they a fast runner? Are they a good worker? Are they a good laborer? We forget that Black people have an interiority, a whole universe inside of them of experience that's very human. And it's important to bring that out through storytelling, because it changes how we see people, right? We no longer live in the world of the stereotypes of Africa is just a poor place with no electricity, no education. No, just by listening to an African talk about themselves and their experience, you start to understand that they too are people. They have hopes, dreams, aspirations, etc., etc. And particularly with the way politics and things are going in the United States, at least, but also all over the world, I think it's important to have more of those stories that remind us of what a person is, because then we can be able to connect to other people as people.
Thank you so much for that. In fact, I can see that we have a lot to talk about today, and these are things that are really very close to my heart, because you did talk of you finally become Black. No, that is a very important conversation. I remember that should be like, I think in 2015, 2014, around then, I did a documentary that I titled Creating the Blackness of Africa. Then with that documentary, I won an award at the Verona Film Festival. My thesis in that documentary was pretty simple, in that being called a Black doesn't define whom I am. It's not able to define me as a person. Because I understand that we could say Black music, Black culture, but does it really explain what it means? The word Black music, does it really explain African music? When we say Black culture, because I understand that the person who will say Black culture want to say African culture, but Black culture is too insignificant, too poor, too superficial to explain African culture. So how do we get entangled in? I think that is where we might start this conversation, because that question is talking about identity. Of course, when they talk about this, they are looking at it from the point of view of categorization, or just looking at, like, putting objects together. Okay, that is a small one. Okay, this one. That is yellow. Okay, add this one to it. And yeah, I just put them together, put them there. That is how they are looking at it. That is why they call it, black, white, green. But when I'm looking at it, when you say a Black person or a white person,